I don't think there is sufficient information to know about why he targeted that synagogue.
We've got some updates on the Texas synagogue hostage situation that's now thankfully cleared up. Also, the left is pushing Universal Orphanhood. Holy cow, that is a great story. All coming up, all that and more. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live, and it starts right now. 2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from a dingy bunker completely cut off from the outside world, except for you, fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Today it is January 17th, the year of our Lord 2022. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, his birthday, also federal holiday, but news doesn't stop, things don't stop moving, so we're here bringing you what I think is important on today, Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. I want to get to this story straight away, the synagogue situation in Texas. If you weren't paying attention over the weekend, to briefly lay out the story, and I've got an article that I'm going to read, there was a big... some crazy person took over a synagogue, or at least went in there and took 4 hostages. All of them are safe now, and we'll get to what actually happened in just a quick second. But that happened over the weekend that you should be aware of. Also, just to tease the next thing coming up, because that's the big thing. If you're looking at the headline, you're thinking, well, what the heck is Universal Orphanhood? That's coming up next, so stick around. It is nuts. But... to get to what happened in Texas over the weekend, a hostage situation was reported. Police responded to Congregational Bethel Israel in Texas at about 10:40 a.m. on Saturday when authorities said a hostage, a person took 4 hostages during a live stream morning service at the synagogue. He released 1 hostage about 5 p.m. And explosions where gunshots were heard about 9:12 p.m. on Saturday outside the synagogue, and all four hostages eventually were released. Terrible situation, bad thing, bad dude, crazy dude goes into a synagogue, decides to take hostages, and fortunately everybody's safe. The person who took the synagogue over is now dead. The police have yet to release whether or not he was killed by police fire or a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The FBI on Sunday identified the hostage taker in the standoff at the Coreyville Synagogue as Malik Fazil Arkham, a 44-year-old British citizen, Akram, who was heard speaking during the live stream broadcast on the 11-hour standoff, died Saturday night after hostage rescue team breached the building. Again, unclear, and the police have not yet said if he killed himself or was killed in the breach to rescue the remaining hostages. Interestingly enough, the federal government was oddly quiet about it over the weekend. That's why I kind of wanted to bring this story. Again, fortunately, it's not going to make a ton of news because it didn't end in a terrible situation. But the quotes out of the federal government were odd. Kamala Harris put out this statement yesterday. The vice president said, "This morning, we were grateful to the people, the hostages, grateful about the FBI, the community." Then she said, "While we learn more about the hostage taker's motivation, we know what happened yesterday at the Congregational Beth Israel is a reminder that we must speak up to combat anti-Semitism and hate wherever it exists." Yes, agree, but I think one of the key things here, and we're going to get a quote from Joe Biden in just a second, is while we wait to learn more about the hostage taker's motivation. Remember, if you remember, in many circumstances, this is why I think the federal response was weird. If you look at the Jacob Blake situation, if you look at the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, if you look at all of these other situations, it was immediate jumping to conclusions from the vice president and now the sitting president of the United States. That didn't happen here. They decided to wait for more information. Which brings us to, and again, I don't disagree with any of the sentiment she had about being thankful for the people that were able to escape the situation and prayers for anybody in that community that's going to be affected. All of that is fine. what I'm kind of thinking is odd is now the administration is deciding to, when it was a British citizen, I'll say it, with an ethnic sounding name that attacked a Jewish synagogue, now we're going to wait for more evidence. Again, this is not to say that any of this is any good. This is all terrible. And again, I agree with the sentiment of Vice President Harris saying we stand with the families that are affected and we hope that everybody ends up okay. And we're glad that the law enforcement and people were able to resolve the situation as best they could. But now they're going to wait for more evidence. Listen to this clip from Joe Biden. If you haven't already, click the little like button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's totally free. There's nothing. We're not asking you for much. It just helps us get to more people and helps us stay on the air. Also, if you click the little share button down over here, I know people are going to want to see what Joe Biden had to say about this. All of this, again, within the context of the last 2 years of people jumping to conclusions, especially on the left side of the aisle when it comes to these sorts of terrible instances. Listen to this from the president.
Do you know why he targeted that specific synagogue?
Well, no, I don't. We don't have. I don't think there is sufficient information to know about why he targeted that synagogue, why he insisted on the release of someone who's been in prison for over 10 years, why he was engaged, why he was using anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli comments. We just don't have enough facts.
So here's the thing. I agree with the president. In instances like this, I think we should let the facts unfold. In all of these sorts of tragedies, the news that you receive in the first 24 hours is usually wrong and ends up wrong. So I agree with the president and the vice president and their sentiment of, look, we got to hold our horses here. We don't entirely know what happened, and hopefully that will become more clear as the investigation continues. However, that is not what they did in so many other circumstances. Kyle Rittenhouse's case, Jacob Blake's case. Remember, Kamala Harris went and visited Jacob Blake. Not sure if it was an in-person visit or on the phone visit. But anyways, Kamala Harris reached out to Jacob Blake before all of the facts unveiled themselves. Joe Biden effectively tied Kyle Rittenhouse to white supremacy before any of the facts rolled out. And even after those cases, especially the Kyle Rittenhouse case, Joe Biden tweeted, "We are all disappointed." So, while I agree with the sentiment in this instance of, look, we don't know. There are so many variables at hand. Obviously, the situation is terrible, but we don't know, and we're going to wait for the facts to unveil themselves through the investigative process. While I agree with this sentiment there, where was that everywhere else? I don't know. And again, it is interesting that now that a foreigner, I guess, I don't know what the appropriate term is, and I'm not trying to denigrate all people that come to the United States. That's not what I'm trying to do. Don't take me out of context there. But someone who is not a U.S. citizen with a Middle Eastern sounding name, all of a sudden we're going to wait for the facts to come out. And again, this is just what's happening. This is not denigrating anyone for any specific race, none of that. This is just, isn't it interesting that now we're going to wait for the facts to come out? From the President of the United States. You're going to want to stick around for this if you've got some time. I know, people have the day off. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So, maybe you got some time off to stick around and check out this, because this is unbelievable. This is an actual story that was published in the San Francisco Chronicle, as it's actually known. I think you need to hear this because this is a legitimate lefty talking point that I think we're all going to have to wrestle with at some point. And I would like to get politicians on the record talking about this. But before I tell you about that, I got to tell you about this. What are gas prices? Seriously, in the comment section, I know we do this a lot, but what are gas prices at where you are? What is a loaf of bread at where you are now? My wife and I and her parents were out to breakfast yesterday in the Southern California city that we live, and the prices at the restaurant that we go to frequently all jumped about $1.30. I don't blame the restaurant. I blame the government doing everything it can to sabotage the value of the US dollar. So how do you protect yourself against it? Because I don't want to see prices go up constantly. I didn't get a 7% raise last year. How do you protect yourself? The best way you can do that is through gold. Gold has held its value for longer than any other commodity pretty much in the history of ever. Dating back to the caveman era, precious metals has held value. And the best way that you can learn how to invest in gold and protect your money is with our friends at Birch Gold. They will send you a no obligation, no risk, no nothing packet that teaches you everything you need to know about protecting your savings through gold. If you have an IRA, if you have a 401k, you can convert your 401k, your IRA into a gold-backed IRA fund. And you can learn how to do that by texting JOBOB to 989898. And our friends at Birch Gold will send you everything you need to know to get that started. Protect your savings today against inflation, which is not going down anytime soon. Back to this. This is one of my... I should choose my words carefully. I don't want to say one of my favorite stories because it's not. This is crazy. This is an absolute... it goes against everything that I think. When I say this is the most exciting thing, that's not even the right term. This is nuts. I'm going to read you an opinion piece that appeared. I first saw it last week. Thursday, somebody had sent it to me on Instagram, which, by the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, Facebook, social media, any of those social media platforms, do it, because there are a lot of people that send me stories that I'm not aware of. I'm only one guy. I can only take in so much information during the day, so send me stuff. I had a couple people send this to me on Thursday, and a couple people over the weekend send it to me. I first saw it in the VC Star, but also it also came out in the San Francisco Chronicle, which is a major newspaper in California. The piece was entitled, or the piece talks about pushing universal orphanhood, basically saying it is time for Californians and people around the country to give up their kids in the name of equity. You heard that right. If you're just listening to this, I'm just going to read from this article, and you tell me what you think. Let me know in the comment section. What do you think about this? If California, this is an article written by a guy named Joe Matthews, again, that appeared in an opinion piece in the San Francisco Chronicle. If California is ever going to achieve true equity, the state must require parents give away their children. This is serious, I think. Actually, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section if I keep continuing reading this, if this is the most thinly veiled, sarcastic article you've ever heard. But I think this guy is actually serious. I'm going to read that first line again. If California is ever going to achieve true equity, the state must require parents give away their children. Today's Californians often hold up equity, the goal of just society, completely free from bias, as our greatest value. Okay, we're in line number one, and I already can quibble with that. I don't agree with that at all. Most Californians often hold up equity as their greatest value. No, I would guarantee you that is not true, but we're not going to get hung up on that. Governor Gavin Newsom makes decisions through an equity lens. Institutions from dance ensembles to tech companies have publicly pledged themselves to equity. Remember, equity should be a bad word. Equality, the right to equal opportunity, seems great. Everybody should get the same, well, as much as we can, because you're never going to get it absolutely perfect. We should get everybody the same amount of opportunity. But equity is on the other end of the spectrum. Equal opportunity starts at the beginning of life. Equity means that everybody, no matter what they do, should end up in the same place. So, if you decided to start doing meth when you were 17 years old, first of all, that's terrible. It's an actual tragedy and is a terrible thing that could happen to a young person. But if you started to do meth early on in life, that means at 50 years old, you should have the same amount of money. You should be in the same place as somebody who went to Harvard and decided to work their butt off and become a financial analyst, lawyer, whatever. They should be the same, regardless of life's choices. That's what equity means, folks. If you're not catching on to this, the narrative has been switching equity and equality, using them interchangeably. They are not the same thing. Equality is at the beginning of life. Perfect, fine. We're all okay with that. Equity is we should all end up at the same place, regardless of whether or not we made good life decisions or bad life decisions. I'll continue with this article. But their promises are no match for the power of parents. Fathers and mothers with greater wealth and education are more likely to transfer those advantages to their children, compounding privilege over a generation. I would probably say compounding good decisions and promoting good life choices, but agree to disagree on that statement, I guess. As a result, children of less advantaged parents face an uphill struggle. Social mobility has stalled and democracy has been corrupted. There's a lot of nits to pick there. We won't get caught up on that because I do want to get through that, and I realize I'm spending a lot of time on breaking down this dumb guy's argument. So we get to this part of the article, which I think is hilarious. My solution? Making raising your own children illegal. And this is a direct quote. He said his solution is making raising your own children illegal. Good luck with that one, buddy. It is simple. My solution is simple, and while we wait for legislation to pass, we can act now. Again, this is some random dude writing, again, an opinion piece in the San Francisco Chronicle. The rich and poor should betrade their kids, and homeowners should swap children with homeless neighbors. I don't know. I'm just curious. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll have to get into the comments so we can read some of these comments. His solution is simple, and while we wait for legislation to pass, the rich and poor should trade kids, and homeowners might swap children for their homeless neighbors' children. Okay, dude. This is again a real thing being pushed by real people in real newspapers. The left's introduction of anti-racism and gender identity in schools faces a bitter backlash from parents. Ending Parenthood would end that backlash. Ending Parenthood, helping dismantle white supremacy and outdated gender norms. Democrats would also have the opportunity to build a new pillar of the safety net, a child-raising system called foster care for all. This is, again, a real person. Again, this has to be a joke. There's no way that this is actually something that somebody thinks. But if it is sarcasm or if it is satire, this is the most thinly veiled satire that I've ever seen. I did just, so you know, reach out to this guy and see if he wanted to come on to our show. If we get him, that'd be great. I would imagine that he's going to say no, given that the arguments he is making are so easily defeatable. I wouldn't want to go on anybody's show either. But then we get to this. This is the kicker for this guy's quote-unquote argument. Perhaps such coercion sounds dystopian, but just imagine the solidarity that Universal Orphanhood would create. Universal Orphanhood would create solidarity. Wouldn't children raised in one system find it easier to collaborate on global problems? No, not necessarily at all. Aside from that being a bad idea, the conclusion that you reach isn't a great one. But then he goes on to say this. Now, I don't expect universal support for Universal Orphanhood. You don't say. You don't expect everyone to go along with this. A few contrarians lost in the empty chasm between American extremes might object to this rational proposal on emotional grounds. Again, we can go back and forth on this all day, but this guy's nuts. Let me read that again. A few contrarians, a few people that just like going against the current just because that's the way that, not because this is completely an insane policy, but just because they're contrarians and they like going against the norm. That's why people disagree with this. Might object to this rational proposal on emotional grounds. Because this is totally rational. Trading your kids with somebody else's kids because they're disadvantaged, probably by their own doing, is super. It's a rational way to do things. That's trading your kids. If you own a home, trading your kids with a homeless person's kids is a rational stance, according to this guy. They might argue that pursuing your own conception of the family is the fundamental to freedom. So this is ridiculous. I've got some comments in here. Yeah, this guy's an idiotic bend. He's a fool, devil's tool. Yeah, none of these are. This person is an absolute lunatic just trying to get attention. He's lonely, says Frank. Yeah, this is nuts. OMG, this guy is crazy. We're not going to give up our children. God help us in California. Some of the comments coming in, again, from a guy who thinks that Universal Orphanhood should be the norm in society. But that brings us to a Rasmussen poll that I thought was interesting that you should hear. This is, again, relating to this idea that people shouldn't raise their kids. We're going to get to more of the hard numbers on the Rasmussen poll that came out, because I think you've probably already seen this sort of thing, especially if you're paying attention to the news. Maybe we'll get to more of the broader numbers later on. But in regards to this story about the push for universal orphanhood, I thought this was interesting from this Rasmussen poll. From Rasmussen, how far are Democrats willing to go to punish the unvaccinated? 29% of Democratic voters would support temporarily removing parents' custody of their kids if parents refuse, and I don't like that word, to take the COVID-19 shot. If parents don't want to get the shot that they maybe don't need and aren't being forced to in any way, shape, or form, 29%, a third of Democrat voters think that those parents should lose custody over their kids. Holy cow. All right. That's, I don't know what to do with that information. That seems nuts. 29% of Democrat voters would support temporarily removing parents' custody of their children if parents don't want to get the shot that, if they're under 45 and healthy, statistically they don't need. So if you don't want to get something that you don't need, you lose your kids. Temporarily, of course, though. The government isn't going to raise your kids, so says this poll. But a third of Democrats think that you should do that. Again, I don't think these people are necessarily evil, but this idea is pretty dang up there in the realm of evil. I want to get to this, a couple different stories. Glenn Youngkin doing some things in Virginia. You'll know him from the super blue state of Virginia, elected a Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, a couple months ago. Also, Novak Djokovic. There's some news coming out of there that you probably should be hip to. Again, Australia has gone crazy. But before we get into that, I got to tell you about protecting your money. Do you have savings? Do you have any money saved up for retirement? Or are you just dependent on Social Security to get you through retirement? If you're part of the latter group, I would recommend that you start saving now. It's never too late to save. You should do it now. Don't trust Social Security, because guess what? Social Security is run by the government. What else is the government doing? It is sabotaging the value of the US dollar, intentionally or not. The money that the federal government is putting into the system has made inflation go rampant. 7% last year. And unless you got a 7% raise, or your mutual fund or whatever it was that you have in the stocks went up 7%, you lost money. The best way you can protect your savings is through precious metals. I've been in precious metals for a long time. This is not a, oh, well, I'm going to tell people about this product, but I don't use it. No. I've been in gold for 15 years, since I was in college. And the best way that you can get invested in gold now, because you may be thinking, I don't know how to invest in gold. Do I just get a truck and back up a bunch of gold to my property and bury it in the backyard? Well, that's one way you can do it. And Birch Gold can help you do that if you would like that sort of thing. But the more easy way to do things is if you can convert an existing IRA, which I hope you have, and an existing 401k into a gold-backed IRA, so that you can hedge your bets against inflation and protect your savings. You can text JOBOB to 989898 and get a no risk, no obligation, no nothing packet that gives you everything you need to know about investing in gold and protecting your savings. Birch Gold is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. They're a fantastic company that is really, in essence, only looking out for your best interest when it comes to protecting your savings. So text JOBOB to 989898. Get your free, no obligation, risk-free pamphlet today that tells you everything you need to know about investing in gold. Couple headlines that I want to get to before we close out the show. Glenn Youngkin was inducted? No, that's not the right term. Why can't I think of, don't you hate it when your brain just farts out on you? Inaugurated as the governor of the very blue state of Virginia. Now, Virginia, there's a lot of rural areas that are super red, but it's generally controlled by its super heavily populated areas surrounding Washington, D.C., and all of the Beltway crowd that lives there. So they're super blue when it comes to a lot of the policies, but they elected a Republican governor. You probably remember this story from a couple months ago. Beat the former Democratic governor, Terry McAuliffe. Joe Biden was out there campaigning constantly, decided that they were going to put all of their eggs in the CRT basket and lost. But Glenn Youngkin was inaugurated over the weekend and immediately on his first day signed 11 executive actions on his first day in office, including banning critical race theory, ending statewide school mask mandates, and rescinding the vaccine mandate for state employees. So that is what you get when you elect somebody who has a particular political bent in a state that is pretty blue. You get all of the freedom things that we see in Florida, we see in Texas, that pretty much, I would say, the majority of America wants now that they've experienced the draconian measures taken by the governments that they exist in due to COVID. But Glenn Youngkin doing a lot of stuff in Virginia, promoting freedom in so many different ways. Also, have you been paying attention to this? So Novak Jokovic is the #1 ranked tennis player in the world, right? He is the Tom Brady of tennis. He's the LeBron James of tennis, if you're not hip to tennis. What would you do if you were the NBA? You would want LeBron James to play in pretty much every game because he's a huge crowd draw. Same thing with Tom Brady. If I were tennis, I would want Novak Djokovic to play in all of my tournaments because he's the #1 ranked tennis player and is a huge fan favorite crowd draw. People want to see him play. Well, he got deported from Australia leading up to the Australian Open and cannot play in one of the big majors in the tennis community. There's 4 majors. One of them is the Australian Open. He will not play because he was deported from the country. World #1, Novak Djokovic. Now, I saw this. I'm stealing this, but I think it was funny. Novak's Djokovic. That's his funny name, given all of this. He did not want to take the COVID shot. He's also 32 years old, I think, 34 years old. Tennis player, so he's in crazy good shape. Therefore, probably doesn't need it. And is also not at a risk to literally anybody else. I don't know if you've ever seen tennis be played, but you play it alone, very separated from pretty much everybody else. Tennis and like golf are like the only 2 sports that you're alone by yourself. You don't need to be in contact with anybody. Nevertheless, the Australian government decided to deport the #1 tennis player in the world. Djokovic arrived to his native Serbia on Monday after being deported from Australia on Sunday because he was not vaccinated against the COVID-19, which he does not need and is not putting anybody else at any more risk than anybody who does have the shot. Serbian president said that he accused the Australian government of harassing the top-ranked tennis star who lost a legal battle to overturn the decision to revoke his visa. Moral of the story here is Australia has gone absolutely freaking nuts. Michael commented, said, out of Australia for 3 years. I'm not sure if he lived there and is now out of Australia, but I would imagine if you did live there and left, I'd be thankful that you did. I saw this tweet Saturday, Friday, but somebody said if Donald Trump did not win, and again, maybe some people have differing opinions on Donald Trump. I tended to love his policies, and sometimes he shoved his foot in his mouth, and I wish he didn't do that. That's pretty much my entire stance on the former president. But I saw this tweet the other day that said if Donald Trump didn't win in 2016 and was able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices, we would be looking pretty close to Australia. And I can't help but think that prediction statement seemed pretty dang accurate. If Donald Trump wasn't the president of the United States and didn't get to appoint all 3 of those Supreme Court justices, we would be pretty dang close to being Australia ourselves. But who knows? Thankfully, we won't ever have to find out. Australia has absolutely lost its mind. We've played videos constantly over and over and over and over again. Shelley, interesting comment there. I disagree with you a lot. I'm not going to take the time to tell you all of the reasons why you're not entirely correct. But, is what it is. If it goes without saying, I do think we're not going to get into that. I'm not going to get riled up by inadvertent comments here that are deviant from the truth. Anyways, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back here tomorrow. I've got an interview with James Lindsay that we taped last week. James Lindsay, if you don't know who he is the leading light anti-critical race theory, anti-critical theory, anti-queer theory, all of the things that he's leading the charge on that front, way smarter than I am. I was thankful just to keep up with him during the interview. Maybe we'll play some sections of that tomorrow. But we'll be right back here tomorrow with some more news of the day. The Biden administration has a couple things going out today that will fill you in on tomorrow. But that'll do it for us today. We'll see you same time, same place. God bless America.